I was standing in the bridal suite, fully dressed, veil pinned, flowers in my hand, when my sister-in-law walked in, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "Just so you know, we moved a few things around. Hope you don't mind." I minded. I just didn't know how much yet. 20 minutes later, I found my mother sitting alone in a folding chair outside the reception hall. Not inside, outside, in the corridor, because someone had removed her name from the seating chart entirely and given her table to the groom's college friends. My mother, the woman who worked back-to-back hospital shifts for 15 years so I could go to college without a single student loan. The woman who drove 4 hours round trip every single weekend of my freshman year just to make sure I was eating. The woman who had been planning this day in her heart since I was 7 years old. She was sitting in a folding chair in a hallway, alone, pretending she was fine. I walked back into that bridal suite. I looked at myself in the mirror, the dress, the veil, the flowers, and I made a decision. Not an emotional one, not a panicked one, a clear one. What I did next changed everything, and I would do it again without blinking. This is my story. My name is Callie Reeves. I'm 31 years old, and this is the day I stopped being grateful for a chair that was never meant for me. Before I go any further, if you're new here, hit subscribe. I share stories like this every day. Drop your city and the time in the comments. I genuinely love knowing who's out there listening. Now let's go back to the beginning. I grew up in Hartwell, Georgia, population just under 6,000. The kind of town where the gas station has 3 pumps and the owner knows your daddy's name, where everybody goes to the same church, eats at the same diner, and shows up to the same Friday night football games whether or not they have a kid on the field. My mom, June Reeves, was a registered nurse at Hartwell General for 22 years. Night shifts, double shifts, holiday shifts. She worked every combination you can imagine. She smelled like antiseptic and drugstore lotion. She kept her scrubs ironed and her shoes polished, and she never, not once, complained about the hours. My dad, Ray Reeves, drove an 18-wheeler for a regional freight company. He was gone Monday through Friday for most of my childhood. When he came home on weekends, he made up for every lost hour. Saturday mornings were pancakes. Sunday afternoons were porch time. He coached my softball team even though he had never played a single inning in his life and learned the rules from a library book. We lived in a 3-bedroom house on Clover Road. The kitchen ceiling had a water stain shaped like Florida. The back porch screen had a hole in it that Dad kept patching with electrical tape. The driveway was cracked down the middle, and every spring a dandelion grew out of that crack like it owned the property. I loved that house. I love it still. I was the first person in my family to get a 4-year degree. Then I went back and got my master's. I became a licensed occupational therapist. I built a practice in Atlanta. Small, but steady, the kind where your clients send you Christmas cards and pictures of their kids walking for the first time. I did all of that because June and Ray Reeves never let me believe I couldn't. There's something nobody tells you about growing up in a house like mine. You don't realize what you have until someone else shows you how they see it. You don't understand that the pancakes and the porch time and the library book about softball are extraordinary things, because when you're living inside them, they just feel like Tuesday. They feel like ordinary. They feel like home. It took Sylvia Beaumont to make me understand, not because she showed me something I was missing, but because she showed me clearly and without apology what it looks like when someone decides that ordinary isn't good enough for their table. That understanding cost me a wedding. It gave me back everything else. So when I tell you what happened on that Saturday in June, I need you to understand something first. I did not walk away because I was dramatic. I did not walk away because I was emotional. I walked away because I finally understood what it meant when someone shows you, clearly and without apology, exactly how little they think of the people who made you. I met Derek Beaumont at a professional conference in Atlanta. He was presenting a panel on real estate investment strategy. I was there for a continuing education credit. We ended up at the same coffee station during the break and talked for 45 minutes without either of us realizing the next session had already started. Derek was smart, quick with words. He had that particular kind of confidence that comes from growing up in a family where nobody ever told him no. He asked for my number, I gave it to him, and by the second date, I already knew this one was different. The Beaumonts were Atlanta money. Not new money, not flashy money, the quiet, established kind that doesn't need to announce itself because it's been there long enough to become part of the furniture. Derek's father, Franklin Beaumont, ran a commercial real estate firm that had been in the family for 3 generations. His mother, Sylvia, was a former junior league president, a board member at the private arts academy across town, and the kind of woman who sent handwritten thank you notes within 24 hours of any social event. The first time I met Sylvia, she was wearing a pale blue blazer with gold buttons. She shook my hand, smiled perfectly, and said, "Derek tells me you work with disabled children. That must be so rewarding." I am an occupational therapist. My clients range from stroke survivors to post-surgical patients to children with developmental delays. It is a licensed medical profession that requires a graduate degree and national board certification. She said disabled children the way someone says bless your heart in Georgia. I smiled. I let it go. Derek squeezed my hand. I told myself she'd warm up. She never did. But she was strategic about it. Sylvia Beaumont didn't do anything as obvious as outright hostility. She did something far more effective. She made me invisible. At family dinners, she'd ask Derek questions and talk across me. At holidays, she'd reference events I hadn't been invited to, as though I obviously knew about them. She'd make plans that included Derek and casually forget to mention that I might have wanted to be consulted. Not aggressive, not dramatic, just a slow, steady erasure. Derek always had a reason. She's just old-fashioned Callie. She grew up differently. Give her time. I gave her 16 months. Derek proposed on a Saturday evening in March. We were on the back porch of our apartment, takeout containers between us, some old movie on the laptop. Nothing cinematic, nothing staged, just the two of us. He got down on one knee on that back porch, ring in hand, and I said yes before he finished the sentence. I said yes to Derek, to the man on that back porch, to the person who knew how I liked my coffee and remembered that my dad's back got bad in cold weather and called my mom by her first name from day one. Then the wedding planning started, and Sylvia Beaumont stepped in like she'd been waiting for the starting gun. Within 2 weeks, she had a venue selected, the Magnolia Club, a private members-only event space in Buckhead where the Beaumonts had held 3 decades of milestone celebrations. 11,000 square feet, 12-foot ceilings, a terrace overlooking a manicured garden. Beautiful? Absolutely. Mine? Not even a little. When I mentioned the idea of something smaller, somewhere more personal, maybe a venue in Hartwell, or at least something I'd been part of choosing, Sylvia tilted her head and said, "Callie, sweetheart, we have relationships with the Magnolia Club staff. It just makes everything smoother." Derek said, "It's just a venue, babe. The marriage is what matters." So I let it go. Then she chose the caterer, then the florist, then the photographer, her friend's son, who charged twice the market rate, then the invitation design, which featured the Beaumont family crest in the upper left corner. I didn't know they had a family crest until I saw it embossed on my own wedding invitation. My mother, June, made one request, just one. She asked if she could do a reading during the ceremony, a passage from Corinthians, the same one her own mother had read at her wedding. It had been in our family for 2 generations. Sylvia told Derek that the ceremony was already running long, that they'd have to cut something. Derek told me, "Mom thinks it'll make the program feel crowded. We can find another moment for your mom." There was no other moment. Mom said it was fine. She was happy just to be there. I watched her smile when she said it, and I told myself she meant it. I know now that she was doing what she always did, shrinking herself so everyone else could be comfortable. 22 years of nursing will teach you that. You learn to make yourself small in a room so the patients and the families can take up all the space they need. You give and give and give, and you call it professional. You call it strength. My mother called it fine, and I let her call it fine. That is the part I carry. Not anger at Sylvia, not even anger at Derek. The part I carry is the moment I watched my mother say it's fine, and I nodded and moved on, because I decided the marriage was what mattered. I was wrong about that. The marriage never would have been what mattered, not in a family that was already deciding, months before the wedding, that June Reeves didn't quite fit. 3 months before the wedding, Sylvia sent Derek a revised guest list. Their side had grown from 80 guests to 130. Business associates, club members, a city council member and his wife, 3 couples from their country club. The venue capacity was 250. Our original plan had been 120, 60 from each side. My side stayed at 60. Their side had more than doubled. When I brought it up, Derek said, "Dad has business relationships, Callie. These things matter." I pointed out that this was supposed to be our wedding, not a corporate mixer. He said, "You're being sensitive." That was the first time he used that word. It wouldn't be the last. 2 months before the wedding, I submitted the final seating chart to the event coordinator, a woman named Brenda who worked exclusively with the Magnolia Club and had been recommended, naturally, by Sylvia. I had my parents at table 1, center of the room, facing the dance floor, right where both sets of parents traditionally sit, June and Ray Reeves, the people who showed up every single time life required showing up. I approved that chart, signed off on it, considered it done. I did not know that Sylvia had Brenda's personal cell phone number. I did not know that 2 days before the wedding, she would use it. The morning of my wedding, I woke up in my childhood bedroom on Clover Road. Mom had pressed my dress the night before and hung it on the back of the closet door. She'd set out my shoes, my jewelry, everything organized, the way she used to organize my backpack for the first day of school. A glass of water and a granola bar on the nightstand, a post-it note in her handwriting. "You're going to be beautiful. I love you, Mom." I pressed that note to my chest for a second before I got up. By 9, I was at the Magnolia Club with my bridesmaids. The place was everything Sylvia had promised. White garden roses in tall mercury glass vases, champagne satin tablecloths, gold chargers at every setting, a live harpist in the garden. Stunning, curated, absolutely not me. My maid of honor, Bree, we'd been best friends since the 7th grade. She was pre-law, razor-sharp and fiercely loyal, walked the room with me during the setup window. And that's when she stopped. "Kelly," her voice was low, "come here." She was standing at table 1. She picked up a place card, then another. Franklin Beaumont, Sylvia Beaumont, Charles and Eleanor Beaumont, the Whitmore family, Judge and Mrs. Patterson. Not a single Reeves, not one. We checked the other tables. Table 2, Beaumont cousins. Table 3, country club members. Table 7, business associates. We kept going. We found my parents at table 11. Table 11 was against the far right wall, not near the dance floor, not near the stage, tucked beside the service corridor, the hallway that connected the kitchen to the main room, where servers would be walking in and out all evening with trays and empty plates. The overhead fixture above table 11 was a track light aimed at the corridor, not a chandelier. The chairs at that table were a slightly different style, the secondary set the club used for overflow seating. Ray Reeves, June Reeves, 2 place cards in gold ink on cream stock. I stood there looking at my parents' names, and I felt something drop out of the bottom of my stomach. I found Brenda near the florist station. Who changed this seating chart? Brenda's expression didn't flicker. Mrs. Beaumont called Thursday. She said she needed to accommodate some late additions on the Beaumont side, and that you'd approved the changes. I had approved nothing. I went to find Derek. He was in the groom's suite, dress shirt on, cuffs open, having coffee with his groomsmen. The room smelled like cologne and leather. Everything easy, everything comfortable. "Your mother changed the seating chart." He set the coffee down. She mentioned she needed to shift some things for the Patterson table. She moved my parents to table 11 against the service corridor. He ran a hand through his hair, the same gesture he always made when he'd already decided not to fight something but hadn't figured out how to say it yet. Callie, it's one table. Your parents won't care. I care. You're spiraling. It's wedding nerves. Let's just get through the ceremony and… Derek, I kept my voice even. This is not nerves. This is my parents sitting against a service corridor because your mother decided they weren't important enough for table 1. Are you going to fix it? He was quiet for 3 full seconds. Then, I'm not going to start a war with my mom 4 hours before we get married, Callie. There it was. Not a no, not a yes, just I choose the path of least resistance, even on our wedding day, even over your parents. I walked out of that room, and I did what I always do when I need to think clearly. I walked. I was halfway down the east corridor, heading back toward the bridal suite, when I heard my mother's voice. Not inside a room, in the hallway. She was standing just outside the reception hall entrance, and she wasn't alone. Sylvia was there. 2 of Sylvia's friends, women I recognized from the bridal shower, stood slightly behind her, champagne flutes already in hand at 10:45 in the morning. Mom had her small beaded clutch pressed against her stomach, the clutch I'd watched her spend 2 weekends searching for because she wanted something that matched the dusty rose of her dress, the dress she'd bought on sale at Dillard's and had tailored twice to get the fit right. She'd shown it to me on a video call the week she found it, holding it up against herself in the dressing room mirror, asking if the color was right. I told her she looked beautiful. She said she just wanted to make Callie proud. She was wearing that dress now, standing in a hallway, holding her clutch like an anchor. Sylvia was speaking. Her voice was light, conversational, the kind of tone that is designed to sound innocent while landing like a blade. June, I hope you don't feel overwhelmed by all of this. I know it's a lot to take in. The Magnolia Club can be quite a lot for people who haven't been in these spaces. Mom laughed softly. Oh, it's just beautiful. Callie must be so excited. Sylvia tilted her head. I do hope she understands the opportunity she has marrying into this family. Derek could have had his pick, you know. He had a serious relationship before Callie. Lauren Whitmore, her family has been in our circle for years. Very polished girl, very established. She paused, sipped her champagne. But Derek followed his heart, and we support that. I do hope Callie's ready for this world. It's a particular kind of life. One of Sylvia's friends murmured something. They all laughed. My mother stood there and smiled and nodded and held that little beaded clutch like a lifeline. I stood 20 feet down that corridor, and I watched my mother, 22 years of night shifts, 4-hour round-trip drives, ironed scrubs, Post-it notes, granola bars, video calls in dressing rooms asking if the color was right, stand in a hallway outside a party being held in her daughter's name and absorb the implication that she didn't belong in the room. And she smiled through it. Because she was June Reeves, because June Reeves does not make scenes, because June Reeves has spent her entire life making herself small enough that other people can be comfortable, because she came here today to celebrate her daughter, and she was going to do that even if they put her in the parking lot. That is the moment I think about when people ask me if I have any regrets. I have one. I regret that it took me standing in that corridor to finally stop letting people be comfortable at my mother's expense. Something shifted in me. Not rage. Rage is hot and fast and cloudy. This was cold, still, absolute. The kind of clarity you only reach when you have run out of explanations. I thought about every time I had explained away Sylvia's behavior. Every time I'd said, she'll warm up. Every time I'd let something pass because it wasn't worth the fight. Every small surrender I had made, not because I was weak, but because I was strategic, because I thought if I won the marriage, the small battles wouldn't matter. I had been wrong. The small battles were never small. They were practice runs for this moment, for this hallway, for my mother standing outside her daughter's wedding reception because someone decided she was less than. And the man I was about to marry had just told me he wasn't going to start a war over it. You don't go to war for a seating chart. You go to war for your mother. He didn't know the difference. I did. I turned around and went back to the bridal suite. Bree was waiting. She already knew from my face. "Talk to me." I told her. The hallway, Sylvia's words, Derek's non-answer, all of it. 2 minutes, no pauses. Bree didn't flinch. She pulled out her phone, opened her calendar app, and said, "Okay, marriage license." "What?" "The license. You told me Sylvia wanted to make it a moment. The signing was supposed to happen at the sweetheart table during the reception, right? In front of guests." "Yes." "Then you haven't signed anything yet." She looked at me directly. "Callie, the ceremony is symbolic until that license is signed, witnessed, and filed with the county clerk. Derek is not your legal husband until that paper is done. You have options." I let that land. "Whatever you decide, I am standing next to you, but you need to decide before you walk into that room. Once the toasts start, once Sylvia is seated and smiling, and everyone is 3 drinks in, the pressure to sign in front of 190 people is going to be enormous." I was quiet for a moment. "I need to see my mom first." I found my parents on their way into the reception hall. Or rather, I found my mother at the entrance, reading the table cards on the welcome board, and I found my father 2 steps behind her, already watching her face, already understanding something was off. "Callie," Mom looked up. "Sweetheart, look." "Table 11, Mom." Her expression shifted, just a flicker. She recovered it fast. "Oh, that's fine. We'll be close to the—" "It's next to the service corridor." Silence. Dad put his hand on Mom's back, one quiet gesture that said everything. "I've got you. I see this. We're okay." He looked at me, my father, Ray Reeves, who had driven an 18-wheeler across 4 states for 23 years, who had learned softball rules from a library book, who had never once in my memory told me that anything was impossible. He was wearing his good suit, the charcoal one he kept in a dry cleaning bag in the back of the closet, and only brought out for things that mattered. He'd had it pressed last week. I knew because he called to ask if he should go to the cleaners on Elm or the one closer to the highway. He spent 15 minutes on that phone call, making sure he looked right, making sure he honored the day. He was wearing that suit, standing in the service corridor light. "Don't make trouble on our account, Cal." "Dad, we're here for you. That's why we came, not for a table." His voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. I had seen my father tired. I had seen him frustrated. I had never seen him work this hard to make something look like it didn't hurt. "Stay here," I said. "Both of you." Mom reached for my hand. "Callie, don't do anything you can't undo." "I'm not undoing anything, Mom. I'm finishing something." I kissed her cheek. I turned around. I walked back toward the reception hall entrance, and I started thinking. If you're watching this right now, and you've ever had someone make your parents feel small, type "they deserved better" in the comments. Because what I did next, I did it for every person who ever watched their family get put in the back of the room and said nothing. I had 20 minutes before the reception doors opened to the guests. I used every one of them. I walked through the reception hall slowly. I looked at the room the way I look at a new client's intake file, observing, categorizing, understanding the full picture before I react to any single part of it. I noted where the Beaumont family was seated. Table 1, front and center, Franklin at the host's chair, Sylvia to her left. Extended family fanned out from there. Tables 2, 3, and 4. Business associates at 5 and 6. The Whitmore family, Lauren's family, Derek's ex-girlfriend's family, they were at table 4. At table 4, inside the room. My parents were in the corridor. I walked to the vendor coordinator's station near the entrance. There was a laptop, a printed floor plan, and a binder of vendor contacts. I asked the coordinator, a younger woman named Tasha, who I could see was quietly mortified by what had happened to the seating chart, for one thing. The microphone on the stage. Is it live during dinner? Yes, ma'am. The sound system is on from the moment guests enter. Good. I went back to Bree. Here's what I'm going to do. I told her. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for 4 seconds. Then she said, "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "Then I'm with you. What do you need?" "My parents inside the room, at a real table, before anything starts." Bree nodded, already moving. "I'll handle the tables. You go get your parents." "One more thing." I looked at her. "The license. When Brenda brings it out during dessert, I'll intercept it. She won't get within 10 feet of your table." At 12:15, the reception hall doors opened. I had moved my parents. Not to table 11, not to the service corridor. I had moved them, with Tasha's quiet, cooperative assistance, to table 6, a round table with a full chandelier above it, full linen, gold chargers, the proper chairs. It wasn't table 1, but it was inside the room, visible, respectable. It wasn't everything, but it was the first move. Guests filed in. The Beaumont side settled into their front tables with the ease of people who have never sat anywhere but front. My side, family from Hartwell, colleagues from my practice, college friends, my parents' people, spread out across the middle and back with the good grace of people who know how to make themselves comfortable anywhere. The MC, Derek's friend Garrison, a louder than necessary man in a tuxedo that was slightly too tight, stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome both families of our incredible couple." He gestured to table 1, the Beaumont family. Franklin stood, modest and distinguished. Sylvia rose beside him, one hand raised, in a small, graceful wave. The room applauded. Garrison looked at his card and, a brief hesitation, the hesitation of a man who hadn't been given both families on his script, and to all the loved ones joining us today, let's raise a glass. No mention of the Reeves family. Not one word. From across the room, I saw my father notice. He didn't react. He straightened his tie and reached for his water glass. I watched Sylvia scan the room, find my parents at table 6 instead of table 11. Her expression didn't change. She was far too controlled for that, but her gaze held on that table for just a beat too long. She knew I had moved them. She leaned over and said something in Franklin's ear, and then she looked at me. I looked back. I held her gaze for 3 full seconds. Then I turned away first, but slowly, on my own terms. The first course was served, a seared tuna appetizer on a bed of microgreens. Beautiful, expensive, paid for with the $2,000 my parents had contributed toward the catering, a contribution that Sylvia had accepted without acknowledgement and apparently without gratitude. During the appetizer course, I excused myself from the sweetheart table. I stopped at the florist station near the entrance, pretending to adjust my bouquet. From there, I had a direct line of sight to table 1. I was watching, and I was waiting. Sylvia made her move during the main course. She walked to table 6 with the grace of a woman who has spent her life navigating rooms. She leaned down between my parents, put one hand lightly on my mother's shoulder, and said something, low, private, controlled. I was 12 feet away. I heard, "June, I want you to know we're so glad you're here. You must be so proud that Callie found her way into a family like ours." She said found her way the way you'd say it about someone who'd stumbled into a parking spot. Then she moved on, returning to table 1, smile in place, champagne glass lifted. My mother sat very still for a moment. Then she unfolded her napkin and placed it in her lap with great deliberate care. The way she placed it told me everything. She wasn't going to show a thing. She had too much grace for that. Dad reached across and briefly covered her hand. That was when I pushed back my chair. I walked to the stage.
I didn't rush, deliberate pace, heels on polished hardwood, a sound that carries in a high-ceilinged room. Heads turned, a few at first, then the ripple moved outward, table by table. The harpist was in the middle of something classical and beautiful. She stopped mid-phrase. Garrison, the MC, was at the bar. He saw me step onto the stage and jogged back with the uncertain energy of a man who didn't know if this was supposed to happen or not. I took the microphone from the stand before he reached me. The room went quiet, not all at once, in waves, like weather moving through. 200 faces, crystal glasses, white linens, gold chargers. Sylvia at table 1, champagne in hand, chin slightly lifted. Derek at the sweetheart table, jaw tight, eyes tracking me with the careful expression of a man who can see exactly where this is going and has no idea how to stop it. My parents at table 6, my father sitting upright, my mother's hands folded in her lap. I watched all of it. Then I spoke.
Thank you all for being here today. My voice came through the speakers clean and clear. 7 years of patient consultations, of delivering hard news to families in gentle rooms. I knew how to keep my voice steady. I know you came to celebrate a wedding, and I want to be honest with you about what's happening. The last murmur died. Most of you know me as Derek Beaumont's fiancée, but before I was that, and after today, I am Ray and June Reeves's daughter. I want to start there. I let that settle. When I submitted the final seating chart 3 weeks ago, my parents were at table 1, center of the room, right where both families of the couple are meant to sit. I approved that chart. I thought it was done. I paused. 2 days ago, that chart was changed, without my knowledge, without my approval. My parents were reassigned to table 11, beside the service corridor with the secondary chairs, directly in the path of the catering staff for the entire evening. I heard someone inhale sharply at table 3. I found out this morning. When I asked Derek to address it, he told me he wasn't going to start a conflict with his mother 4 hours before our wedding. Complete silence. At table 1, Sylvia's champagne glass stopped moving. That was his choice. He made it freely, and it told me something I needed to know before I signed a legal document binding myself to this family. Derek stood. "Callie, I'll ask you to sit down, Derek." He sat, not because I had authority over him, because 200 people were watching, and every single one of them was absolutely silent, and the room had shifted in a way that even he could feel. Let me tell you about the people who were moved to table 11. I turned slightly. My parents were behind me and to the left, visible to the room. My father, Ray Reeves, drove an 18-wheeler across 4 states for 23 years. He had a torn rotator cuff for the last 4 of them because he couldn't afford to take time off for surgery. He got the surgery after he retired. He learned softball rules from a library book so he could coach my team when I was 9. He has never, in my entire memory, failed to show up. A woman at table 8 pressed her napkin to her mouth. My mother, June Reeves, is a registered nurse. 22 years of night shifts at Hartwell General. She smells like antiseptic and drugstore lotion, and she is the first person I call when I'm scared, when I'm lost, and when I'm proud of something. She left a post-it note on my nightstand this morning. It said, "You're going to be beautiful. I love you." She has been leaving notes like that my whole life. I looked directly at Sylvia. This morning, I stood in this corridor and I listened to you imply to my mother that she should be grateful Callie found her way into a family like yours. I heard you describe Derek's previous relationship with a more established, more polished girl within earshot of the woman whose daughter you were supposedly welcoming into your family. Sylvia's face was perfectly controlled, but the color had drained out of it. Franklin Beaumont was looking at the tablecloth. My parents contributed to this wedding, financially and in every way that actually matters. They drove 4 hours to every venue walkthrough. My mother spent 3 Saturdays researching florists so I'd have options. My dad drove the decorations to Atlanta in his truck because the rental company's delivery fee was too high. I looked out at the room. I came here today ready to spend my life with someone. I am leaving here knowing something more important, that I will not spend my life in a family where my parents are considered less than, where the woman who raised me is spoken to in corridors, where the man I married tells me he won't make trouble over his mother moving my parents to the back of the room. I reached up and unclipped my veil, folded it once, twice, set it on the edge of the stage, neatly. To the guests from Hartwell, thank you. You drove a long way for people you love. That's exactly who you are. I placed the microphone back on the stand. No drop, no drama. Just set it down the way you set down something you no longer need. I stepped off the stage. 60 feet of polished hardwood, my heels, that steady rhythm. Nobody spoke. I walked to table 6. I held my hand out to my mother. She took it. Her fingers were cold. Her grip was solid. Dad stood. He straightened his jacket. He picked up his hat from the back of his chair with the deliberate calm of a man who has driven through ice storms and gotten where he was going every single time. "Let's go home, Ray," Mom said quietly. "Yeah, let's go home." We walked out through the main entrance. Bree was beside me with my coat and bag, because of course she had. The harpist had not resumed playing. The room was still silent behind us. The last thing I heard before the door closed was Franklin Beaumont's voice, low and tight. Sylvia. Just her name, nothing else. Just her name and the particular tone of a man who's just realized the cost of something. If you're still watching right now, thank you. I need you to type "she walked" in the comments if you understand why I couldn't stay. And if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect, I want to hear about it, because you are not alone, not even close. We went to my parents' house in Hartwell, same kitchen table I'd grown up at, the one with the chrome legs and the chip in the corner that had been there since the early 90s. Mom made coffee. Dad sat across from me and said nothing, which was his way of saying everything. At 9 that evening, Bree called. "The license is still in Brenda's folio. I intercepted it during the dessert course, told her you'd be in touch. It was never signed, never witnessed, never filed. Callie, legally, you were never married." I exhaled. One long breath. One knot in my chest gone. Under Georgia law, since you were cohabitating, he could raise property questions, but everything is in your name. Your lease, your bank accounts, your practice license. You're clean. Bree? Yeah. Thank you. Always. Block Derek, block Sylvia, get some sleep. I blocked them. I drank Mom's coffee. I sat at that table for a long time. Dad went to bed around 10. Mom washed the mugs by hand, even though the dishwasher was empty. She always washed by hand when she was working something out. On her way upstairs, she stopped behind me and kissed the top of my head. "I've never been prouder of you," she said. "And that is saying something because you have given me a lot of proud moments." I put my hand over hers. "Go to bed, Mom. You're going to be okay." I know. And I did know. For the first time in a long time, I knew it all the way down. The next morning, I woke up in my childhood bedroom again. Same curtains, same water stain shaped like Florida on the ceiling down the hall, same sound of Dad making coffee at 6:15. And for the first time in 2 years, I didn't wake up with that low background hum of anxiety. The constant low-grade tension of managing Sylvia's expectations, anticipating Derek's reactions, softening myself at the edges so I'd fit more cleanly into a life that was never quite shaped like me. It was just quiet. I lay there in that quiet for a long time. Then I got up, went downstairs, sat across from my dad. He slid a mug toward me without a word. We drank our coffee. The dandelion was already coming up through the crack in the driveway, same as every spring. Some things keep growing no matter what you do to the ground around them. I didn't plan what happened next. I want to be absolutely clear about that. I did not make any calls. I did not post anything on social media. I did not contact a single person from the Beaumont social circle. 200 people watched Sylvia Beaumont tell the mother of the bride she should be grateful for finding her way into their family.
200 people watched Derek Beaumont stay seated while his mother arranged for the bride's parents to be placed against a service corridor. 200 people went home, and they talked. Within a week, Franklin Beaumont received a call from one of his longest-standing development partners, a man named Arthur Caldwell, who had done business with the Beaumont firm for 11 years. Arthur was polite, he was measured, and he told Franklin he'd be sitting out the Peridot Square project. "I've done some thinking, Frank, about partnership, about character, about what a man does when things get uncomfortable. I think I need to reassess." The Peridot Square project was a mixed-use development in Midtown Atlanta. Arthur's stake represented just under $400,000 in partnership equity. Finding a replacement investor took the Beaumont firm 6 months. The project timeline shifted by nearly a year. Sylvia's position at the Arts Academy board came up for renewal in October. I know this not because I tracked it, but because a former colleague of mine, a woman whose daughter attended the academy, mentioned it casually over coffee. The board had received calls. Alumni donors had questions. Several members had been at the Magnolia Club. The vote to renew Sylvia's seat passed. Barely, but the chair position she had been expecting to step into went to someone else. She went from chair to committee member in one vote. I didn't orchestrate it. I just told the truth, clearly, in a room full of people. Truth has a way of doing the rest itself.
3 weeks after the wedding, Derek showed up at my parents' house. I heard the knock from the living room. I heard Dad open the door. I heard Derek's voice, stripped of the smooth confidence now, just a voice, uncertain at its edges. "Mr. Reeves, I was hoping to speak to Callie." "She told you to go through her attorney." "I know, but I wanted to say this in person. I handled things wrong. I should have stood up for your family. I'm sorry, sir." Dad was quiet for a moment. "I believe you mean that," he said. "I do. The problem, son, is that sorry comes after. Courage comes before. You needed courage on a Saturday in June, and you didn't have it. I can't tell you what to do with that, but my daughter already did." He closed the door. Not a slam, a click. I sat in the living room and stared at the water stain on the ceiling that had always looked like Florida. Then I picked up my phone and texted Bree. "He came." She wrote back immediately. "What did your dad say?" I told her. 3 dots, then, "Ray Reeves is the greatest man alive." "Yeah," I wrote back, "he really is." I found an apartment in the Virginia Highland neighborhood of Atlanta. 2nd floor, original hardwood floors, tall windows, a kitchen with actual counter space. First weekend, my parents came up. Dad fixed the bathroom faucet, replaced 2 outlet covers that were loose, and spent Sunday building a small bookshelf in the alcove near the window. He built it from reclaimed oak he'd found at an estate sale in Hartwell and driven up in his truck. Mom measured every window. By the following Saturday, there were curtains in every room. Sage linen in the living room, cream cotton in the bedroom, soft yellow in the small second room I was slowly turning into a proper office. My practice, which had been running at about 60% capacity while I'd been managing the chaos of wedding planning and Beaumont family obligations, started growing again. I took on 3 new clients in the first month. I brought on a part-time assistant so I could expand my hours. By month 4, I had a wait list. There were hard nights. I won't pretend otherwise. There were nights I came home to a quiet apartment and felt the absence of something. Not of Derek specifically, but of the shape of what I had expected my life to look like by now. The version where someone was there when I got home. The version where the future felt settled. Choosing something right doesn't make it painless. It just makes it worth it. I started seeing a therapist on Tuesday evenings. Her name is Dr. Pamela Osei, and she is exceptional. She helped me understand something important, that I had spent 2 years managing Sylvia's behavior instead of addressing it, and that the place I had trained myself to minimize was exactly the place the damage was accumulating. "You knew the whole time," she said in our 3rd session. "You just weren't ready to act on what you knew." I was afraid to be wrong.
You weren't wrong. You were waiting for permission to trust yourself. I didn't need permission anymore. 8 months later, Sunday dinner at my parents' house in Hartwell. Same table, chrome legs, the chip in the corner, 6 chairs that don't match, Dad's wooden rocker from a yard sale he refinished with brown paint, Mom's chair with the cushion she crocheted in 2011. Mine is the one from the kitchen that has a slightly crooked leg and always has. No place cards, no chargers, no harpist. Mom made fried chicken, the recipe that Sylvia cut from the wedding menu because it wasn't appropriate for a seated dinner, mashed potatoes, collard greens, cornbread from scratch. Bree is here with her boyfriend Marcus, a quiet, thoughtful man who brought peach preserves and helped set the table without being asked. Patricia, my colleague from the practice, is here too. She started coming to Hartwell dinners after I told her the story. She brings her famous pound cake and insists she just made extra. My cousin Danielle drove 3 hours from Savannah. The overhead light above the table buzzes slightly. Dad says he'll fix it. He says this every week. None of us actually want him to fix it. It's ours. I look around this table.
Every person here chose to be here. Every person here belongs. Nobody is near the service corridor. Nobody is making do with the secondary chairs. Nobody at this table has ever once made me feel like I needed to earn my seat or shrink myself down to a more acceptable size. This table has always been table 1. I was just too busy trying to fit somewhere else to see it. I think about the version of me that almost signed that license, the version that would have gone back to Atlanta that night as Derek Beaumont's legal wife, carrying the memory of my mother in a hallway, holding a beaded clutch, smiling at a woman who had just told her she didn't belong. I think about the Sunday dinners I would have spent explaining away behavior, the holidays spent managing everyone's comfort but my own, the children I might have raised in a house where some people sat at table 1 and some people were quietly understood to belong somewhere further back. I think about all of that, and then I reach across the table and steal the piece of my dad's cornbread while he's not looking. He catches me. He always catches me. "You've been doing that since you were 4 years old," he says. "You always let me," I say. He doesn't answer. He just smiles. The overhead light buzzes. Someone tells a story. Someone else laughs too loud. Mom refills everyone's sweet tea without being asked because that's just what she does. That's always what she's done. This is my table 1. It always was. It was just waiting for me to stop apologizing for it. I want to say one more thing before I go. If you're watching this from your own table 11, from the back of a room, from the chair that doesn't quite match, from the hallway outside a party being held in your name, I want you to hear this. You are not too much. Your people are not too little. The room that makes you feel like a guest in your own story is not the room you have to stay in. You don't need 200 witnesses. You don't need a microphone. You don't need everything lined up perfectly before you trust what you know. You just need to be willing to fold your veil, set down the mic, and walk toward the people who never once made you feel like you needed to earn your seat. My name is Callie Reeves. I am 31 years old. I am a daughter, a therapist, a best friend, a business owner, and Ray and June Reeves' kid from Hartwell, Georgia, and I have never sat at table 11 again. If this story stayed with you, type table 1 in the comments. If you think I made the right call or the wrong one, tell me. I want the honest answer. And if you're brand new here and this resonated with you, subscribe. I share stories like this every day. Thank you for staying until the very end. It means more than you know.